Hello everybody, welcome to the channel. In this video I am looking at 3R's World War II German General Field Marshal Walter Model. Let's see, we've got inside the box. The back of the lid does have a view of tree-covered mountain if you want to use that as a backdrop for your figure. Let's see. Inside here is Walter wearing a general's uniform. The field marshal is a sub-rank of the general. The World War II German army had 5 different ranks of generals. At the bottom you had the major general, then a lieutenant general, general of infantry, a colonel general, and then at the very top of the ladder was the field marshal. So he is wearing, and they all pretty much wore the same uniform. There were some minor variations. They had to buy their own uniform, so they tended to have them all tailor-made, and so their uniforms tend to be of finer quality than other officers and soldiers in the army. He comes with his hat, and then this one, the emblems are already attached. Sometimes you have to glue them on yourself. Let's see, and then you've got an interim baton, his ceremonial baton, a pair of binoculars. He's got these goggles, which I also got with a previous figure, and they don't work very well. So those will not be used. And then let's see what else we've got. He comes with a greatcoat with a fur-lined collar, gloves, a pair of gray gloves, a leather belt, holster, a little pistol to go in it, a watch. I usually don't put these on the figures unless I think you'll be able to see them. And he comes with the bendy hands already on, and then he's got 2 molded hands. So, and that's it. Other than what's in the, he's got some badges. Normally these figures come with the badges on them, but I guess they figured since he didn't have much to assemble, they wanted to make sure we had something to do with them. So there's an Iron Cross, an infantry badge, Iron Cross clasp, and then a gold wounded soldier badge. He also comes with, I don't know if you can see that, is a little clear plastic disc. That is a monocle that's supposed to fit in this eye here. It's one of those things I'm worried will just fall out and get lost. But he's got a neck order. OTK, a fellow collector and YouTuber, noticed when he put his together that the clasp, this is the Iron Cross with oak leaves and swords, but it's upside down, the clasp there. Fortunately, the Iron Cross, though, is the same on front and back, so I think it's just a matter of flipping it over. Here is the breast eagle. A couple of extra buttons in case you knock one of those off, I guess. Although these are silver and those are gold. And then his collar tabs. They give you two. This one, it's like printed on gold with gold, and then they've got these metallic ones. The actual collar tabs that they used were heavily embroidered. They weren't metal like this, but they were heavily embroidered, and they had a three-dimensional effect to them. So these actually look nicer than these, so I always use these. Like I said, Field Marshal is another rank of general. Originally, they all wore the same collar tabs, this shorter version, but at some point during the war, Hitler authorized field marshals to use this elongated version. So the other sign of rank on a field marshal, all the generals had these elaborate gold epaulets, and then the field marshal was denoted by these cross batons on their epaulets. Fortunately, he came with them already glued on. They have done some figures where you have to glue those on, and I really do not like that. Like I said, the field marshals also have a very visible sign of rank, and that is their batons. Here's the interim baton. This is pretty much their everyday use. In reality, they did not have this enormous, I guess you'd call that a pom on the end of, or tassel on the end of the braid. It was smaller than this, but I guess that is the limitation of manufacturing something at that size. And then for ceremonial purposes, they had this more elaborate baton that they carried around. So that is what we get with Field Marshal Modal. So let's put him together and see how he looks. So here is the finished product, both versions. One thing I failed to mention that was unique with the general's uniform, besides the epaulets and the collar tabs, is the breast eagle. Unlike other members of the army who had the breast eagles embroidered with either white or dull gray thread, generals, theirs was embroidered with gold thread. The other thing that's worth mentioning is this greatcoat is not the standard issue greatcoat for generals. It was usually of a finer material and had red lapel facing, red being the color reserved for the army. No doubt he had this custom made to wear in the winter months, especially on the Eastern Front. The figure was pretty easy to put together. The most difficult part was putting these medals on and trying to get them aligned properly. It was a exercise in patience, trying to get them on correctly. And the other difficult thing on these little medals is trying to get the pin into the little hook, the tiny hook on the back. I wouldn't suggest doing that right after you've clipped your nails. It's helpful to have a bit of a thumbnail to do that. The other thing I have to admit, this particular figure I put together over a month ago when the figure first came out, and that was before I saw OTK's video on the neck order. So it's upside, this part is upside down. These collar tabs, the metal does not bend, and trying to flip the collar up to get the neck order off to fix it, I just don't want to risk it. So I did manage to get the monocle on this one, and it has so far stayed in place. Fingers crossed. I could not get it to stay on this guy though. This particular pose is inspired from a historic photo of Hitler with a large group of his field marshals. I think it was taken right after the fall of France, and he had just promoted a bunch of generals to field marshal. But anyway, they're all indoors, standing in a row. And since they're indoors, they have their hat in their left hands. Usually field marshals carried their baton, whether it was a ceremonial one or the interim baton, in their right hand. And that is because when saluting, instead of saluting with their hand, they would bring their baton up to their hat. So, the other thing to say about this figure is the greatcoat was surprisingly easy to put on. It was rather snug. So it took a bit to get the sleeves of his tunic down, and I was worried the buttons, as small as they are, they would be hard to button up. But with their button tool, it was pretty easy. The other thing worth noting is that these buttonholes all the way to the top are actually working buttonholes, so you could button it all the way up, but I wanted it open to show off his neck order. This also, you can see one of the hacks I've learned with this hobby. Because of the way it was packaged, the bottom of his coat is pretty much like this. It's split, but it's got this folded pleat. The bottom had become flattened out, so I put this clip on it with 2 pieces of cardboard so the clip wouldn't leave an imprint on the fabric. I'll hold that in place, and hopefully after a month, about a month, I'll take it off, and it should look pretty good. Unfortunately, his belt covers this detail on the greatcoat. So that's that. There's the 2 figures, and in a minute I'll show you what it looks, how he compares with some other figures. So here you can see how he compares with a couple of older figures. On the left here I have a Major General, the lowest rank of General, and you can tell his rank 1, he's got the shorter collar tabs. You can compare the size there, but he's got the golden epaulets without any additional rank insignia. And then here on the right is Field Marshal Rommel. This figure I bought in, I think, 2018 or 2019, and when I bought him, it was on the aftermarket, so he was not new in that he wasn't newly released. I bought him mint in box. He was sealed, so I had to put them all together. But you could, some of the difference, and some of it I'm just noticing, is the detailing on the hat emblems are a little bit more refined on the newer figure. Likewise on the Iron Cross, that one is comparable, but this one on his chest, this one looks a little bit better. There's also some differences in his uniform. I think that was just the, personal choice between the two. He's got some red piping down the front here. The other difference are the pockets. And this area, this is called the skirt of the tunic on Modell. It's a little bit shorter than on this guy. So the other thing I'll mention on this figure, I didn't mean this to turn into a review of this figure, but just to point out on these older figures, if you're just getting into collecting these and you might want to get some older figures, this is the baton. I don't know if you can see that very well. This is the baton that came with it, and the paint job is not very good. This is the new baton that came with Model. It's a little bit thicker, but overall the paint is much better. So I actually got an extra one from Model. Actually, I got two to swap out on this guy. So that's something to be aware of if you're going to buy older figures. Their new figures are they've improved in the quality, and the older the figures are, the worse the comparison's going to be. This one, it's not too bad, but the nice thing is a lot of these things are swap out. You can swap out. For instance, they've got the same belt, holster, boots, so forth. So there you are. There's Model. Another thing I will say about him, some biographical information. I really had not heard of him until this figure came out, so I had to do some research. And he was a bit of a mixed bag. He was very capable general. Hitler. He got along well with Hitler. Hitler frequently would send him to trouble spots to turn the situation around. That's how good he was. However, his men did not like serving under him. He was apparently very brutal with his men, both enlisted and officers. The enlisted men gave him the nickname of the Swine. In one army, when they learned that he was being transferred to them, the staff officers all requested a transfer. And other commanders did not care for him either, because he tended to just worry only about what was happening in his sector of the front, and he didn't care what was happening on either side of him. When other generals and field marshals would complain to Hitler about him, Hitler would just, well, that's Model, he'll do what he does. At the end of the war, his army was completely surrounded by the Allies, and the really young and the really old members of his army, he released them from their oath of office so they could surrender without dishonor. The rest of the men, he told them, it was up to them. They could decide for themselves if they wanted to try to fight and break through or surrender. And then he himself committed suicide. So there you have it, Field Marshal Walter Model. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'd like to hear what you think of the figure, and thanks for watching.